spoken about the Big Four agenda in other forums, but it deserves me talking about it to you, honorable members, not least because I will rely on you to pass the legislation upon which it depends, but most importantly, to convince you to join me as agents of the desired change. I wish today to speak on the reasoning that informs this agenda. If you, honorable members, leave the House today with a clearer idea of your role as leaders in this development program, then I will be amongst the happiest of men. When we conceptualized about the Big Four, from discussions that we held with Kenyans about their problems and prospects, particularly as we went about seeking their support, what priorities they would want us to focus on, and in this they were clear. Kenyans want their families kept safe from the catastrophic bills for medical care. They want skilled jobs, especially in manufacturing. They want to be food secure, and they want dignified, affordable homes. And I believe that the Big Four serves each of these. By providing affordable universal health care, we will quite simply save lives, and already extensive work has been done to bring access to quality and affordable health services. In our previous term, we have increased health facilities from 9,000 in 2013 to 11,000 in 2017. Our NHIF coverage widened from a membership of 3.8 million in 2013 to 7.2 million currently. We expanded NHIF coverage for expectant mothers and raised deliveries by skilled attendants from 44% in 2013 to 66% in 2017. Access to antiretroviral drugs to expectant mothers has significantly increased, and today 94% of HIV-positive expectant mothers attending antenatal clinics across access the ARVs, mother-to-child HIV transmission has consequently fallen sharp. As a result of other various health interventions, programs including the mosquito net program, incidences of malaria have dropped from 11% to 8%. Infant mortality has fallen from 52 per thousand to 39 per thousand live births. Under 5 mortality came down from 74 per thousand to 52 per thousand, and maternal mortality dropped from 488 per 100,000 to 362 per 100,000. However, honorable members, despite the improvements we have recorded, there is no doubt that we still have a way to go. We need, in particular, to take steps to improve on immunization through much closer collaboration between the national government and county governments. With regard to immunization, since devolution, immunization has dropped from 90% to 70%. However, honorable members, after the devolution conference of last week, I am happy to inform you that the county governments are keen and willing to work with the national government towards putting together a program to up our immunization to where we were, if not better. During the period, we have also addressed the medical needs of older persons and persons with severe disability, by extending NHIF coverage to 42,000. And while we are working to deliver food security, we are taking steps to help Kenyans impacted by the long drought that had hit the country. The Hunger Safety Net program is cushioning Kenyans against hunger, and through it, cash was transferred to vulnerable households in most parts of our arid and semi-arid areas, giving them the choice of where and how to spend their stipend. This method not only aids farmers and markets, but also restores the dignity of Kenyans who once upon a time were asked to stand in line in the hot sun for a few gorogoros of predetermined food. Honorable members, with respect to housing, it is worth noting that demand for decent homes far outstrips supply, particularly in the low-cost and affordable segment. A decent roof over one's head is the most tangible symbol of a decent life, and it should be a critical part of a family's wealth. The new housing program that we have developed has been designed to incorporate the private sector so as to properly respond to this demand. We expect hundreds of thousands of affordable homes to follow across the country, accompanied by a surge in both jobs and income. Indeed, honorable speakers, my dream is one day, and hopefully in the not too distant future, every Kenyan will have the pride of owning a decent home that will be within the reach of every Kenyan of medium and modest income. Families will have the capacity to retire in the evenings to clean, well-organized and hygienic homes, and Kenya will go to sleep knowing that all its citizens have a sound roof over their heads. This dream is going to become a reality, however, only if we all join hands to eliminate the barriers to its realization through legislation and new policies to incentivize, especially the private sector. Honorable members, turning to security, I can say without fear that we are safer and stronger as a nation than we were when I spoke to this House last. Our alliances are strong and growing stronger. Kenya has become indispensable to the international community's pursuit of stability and security, environmental protection, and of a global community able to respond to large-scale crises when they come. My administration continues to treat its responsibility to protect Kenyans and their property from crime, terrorism, and other forms of insecurity as its core obligation. In the year under review, the country beat back challenges to security. Indeed, the general election was more secure than most in the past, and regrettably we had to respond firmly to deliberate disruptions of the process, to the destruction of property, and to isolated attempts at chaos. In every case, the disciplined services of our republic did their duty, and I commend all of them, all our disciplined services, for their dedication. Going forward, I commit again to strengthening their capacity to keep the peace, because without peace, our desire for a better Kenya will remain a mere wish. I have further empowered the National Administration Services, from the Regional Commissioner down to the Assistant Chief, to supervise security operations, to coordinate the work of national government in the counties, and to improve our engagement with county governments as we serve Kenyans right across the country. Members, the concerted and coordinated response by our disciplined services means that terrorists have had less room to target our people. There have been fewer and less lethal attacks in Kenya today, even as terrorist groups elsewhere damage democracies. I once again commend the diligent men and women from our multiple agencies who detect and prevent attacks. They have kept Kenya safe and sometimes paid the highest price for our safety. I once again say that may God comfort the families of the men and women we have lost, not just in the fight against terrorism, but in every effort to defend Kenya's sovereignty and security. However, even as I say so, we cannot rest, for the threat is ever present, and all Kenyans must constantly be on the alert. Hata nyinyi mko na maji. At this point and moment, I also recall with great sadness the tragic loss of one of our principal secretaries, Mariam El-Mawi, to the consequences of a terrorist attack. I pray that her family, friends, and colleagues may be comforted, and I pray too that this nation never forgets the selfless public service that she gave to it. For all that, I repeat here what I have said elsewhere. Ultimately, security will be found and sustained largely by transforming our politics and in revitalizing the spirit of patriotism and of responsible citizenship. For even though our democracy has become more competitive and Kenyans have grown freer in the multi-party era, that liberty has come with a price. All of us have endured an almost permanent state of political campaigning, which has divided Kenyans, sometimes very tragically, as in 2008. That disunity, fellow Kenyans, is a direct threat, not just to our freedom and not just to our prosperity, but also to our nation. Beyond terrorism, we remain vulnerable to other security threats. Many of them, from terrorism to trafficking, range across our borders. So we cannot be self-absorbed. We must be our neighbor's keeper, no less than our brothers. The same principles that guide us at home must also govern our relations with our neighbors. We defend democracy abroad as we do at home. We want for others the peace that we enjoy here, and we are grateful for the solidarity extended us by our brothers and sisters on the continent. So, we offer it to others in return. I believe last year's events showed the soundness of these principles. Our region, honorable members, is not at peace. Somalia remains troubled, unfortunately largely by foreign agents who weaken its government, and who divide her peoples, and who threaten to reverse the gains that we have all so painfully won under AMISOM. Through it all, we remember that our brothers and sisters in Somalia want to prosper. And we equally prosper if they are safe. It has been our policy then and now to help them regain the peace and prosperity they once knew. We worked and continue to work to secure foreign funding and to support, commensurate to Somalia's challenges, the help that they need for the people of Somalia to build a strong and stable government. Indeed, that is why only a few days after I spoke to this House last year, it was my pleasure to welcome President Mahmoud Abdullahi Mohammed in March of 2017, where we laid plans for a renewal of relations between our two nations. And an early outcome of our agreements that day was the resumption of direct flights between Nairobi and Mogadishu. And members may be sure that more such agreements will follow. I cannot also at this juncture resist mentioning a visit to Somalia in the first quarter of last year, during which I had the opportunity to speak to our soldiers deployed in Somalia. Their courage and their devotion to their mission was extraordinarily inspiring. I ask you, honorable members, as I have done in the past, to keep our men and women in uniform in your prayers and in your deliberations, and to devote yourselves as wholeheartedly as they have to our region's peace and therefore security. Honorable speakers, if Somalia remains unsettled, let us admit that South Sudan remains in crisis. Thousands have died, while hundreds of thousands more have been displaced. In the year since I spoke to this House, we and neighboring countries have hosted hundreds of thousands of South Sudanese refugees. And we have joined friends and partners to help those still suffering inside that country. Equally, we have lent our support to the multilateral peace process, and we continue to urge the leaders of South Sudan to put the interests of their people and motherland above their own. As we have in the past year, Kenya stands with the people of South Sudan in their search for lasting peace. Elsewhere, in our region, there is better news. The East African community, we are growing closer by the day despite challenges. Last year, I had the opportunity to open up our borders to our brothers and sisters from the region, who now have the freedom to live and work in Kenya more easily than they ever have. And they can now partner with us in the task of building a free, united, and prosperous community. That openness to our brothers and sisters is proof of our commitment to the unity not just of the region, but also of the entire continent. For years, all sorts of barriers, legal, custom-wise, have delayed Africa's progress and prosperity. Indeed, in the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement that we signed in Kigali a few weeks ago, we now have at last a real chance of opening up the continent's trade once and for all. If we succeed, then trade, goods, and services will flow across Africa, not outside it. And this, in turn, will bring jobs, skills, and unity. That we are so close to a final agreement now shows the vision of our generation of African leaders, among whom we must count on you, honorable members of this House, for ratifying the agreement without delay. I can only hope that every African nation will show the same foresight that you, our honorable members, have displayed, and I say to you, asanteni sana. Thank you very much. It remains to remind members also that in the last year, since I reported, Kenya has earned her designation as a United Nations Service Center, and I single out just two aspects as a consequence of this. First and simply, it means jobs and training for a good number of our young people. And second, it brings the United Nations closer to Kenya and to Africa. And this development, honorable speakers, is a good and very clear example of Kenya's continued recognition in the family of nations. The truth is that in 2017, we defended the values that we cherish: African solidarity, peace, and prosperity, the rule of law between nations, and we grew in the respect of our partners and friends abroad. So, honorable speakers, it is quite clear that Kenya today is freer, safer, more prosperous, and held in much higher regard than it has ever been. We give thanks for these achievements, but we also recall the truest measure of a nation's strength is the character and unity of its people. The framers of our Constitution were wise to ask all of us to reflect annually on the character of our people and on our adherence to the precepts of our Constitution. And the precept of precepts, the animating value of our Constitution, is unity. Honorable members, we all take pride in our diversity. And as we say in the very preamble of our Constitution, and we are determined to live as one sovereign people, undivided. These words, honorable members, are words of great beauty. Whether we have let them guide us throughout the last year is a big question. And honorable members, let us allow ourselves to cast our minds to last year's political competition. Kenyans twice cast their votes in peace, and in the end, I believe the result reflected the will of the people and respected the law of the land. Our institutions held firm. To our judiciary, I can only ask that your independence be joined to even greater effort on your part to ensure that your arm of government attains the highest standards of conduct and integrity, that it never loses sight of the interdependence of all arms and levels of government. Honorable members, we also learned again a hard truth. Neither peace nor unity are a given. We must work for them. I say so because I believe last year taught me, that if we don't put an end to unrestrained political competition, it will put an end to Kenya. You saw what happened in the heat of the campaign. Words of anger, malice, and hatred were spoken. Politics was no longer a debate between opponents on issues. It was a clash of irreconcilable enemies. You all saw the consequences: lives lost, property destroyed, and our unity sapped. I want to be clear. Never again should a Kenyan life be lost for politics' sake. Never again should Kenyans' property be destroyed on account of politics. But, honorable members, we must also be frank with ourselves that that will not just happen on its own. All of us, and in particular we leaders, have to admit that last year we failed in our duty to preserve the unity of this country, and we must make amends. First, I pray that all of us will spend the days and weeks after this address repairing the bonds that frayed last year. Let us each apologize for our words and for the anger and malice that Kenyans heard. From Mandera to Maseno, from Bita to Mvita, from Lodwar to Lungalunga, let us shake hands and embrace our neighbors. Oh, very good. Let us shake hands and embrace our neighbors, and let us celebrate the diversity that is God's gift to us. Let every leader in the country reach out to our sons and daughters and remind them that they have it in them to forge a Kenya that speaks gently, that criticizes constructively, and that embraces and respects dissent and competition as healthy and civilized ways of collaboration. And since leadership is best done not by extorting, but by example, let me do as I have asked you all to do today, and say that if there is anything I said last year that hurt or wounded you, if I damaged the unity of the country in any way, I ask you to forgive me and to join me and to join me in repairing that harm. Honorable Speakers, I am not the only leader who deeply felt the need to restore unity. The Right Honorable Raila Odinga did so too. So let me praise the statesmanship he showed when on 9th March this year, he and I publicly committed to reconciliation with the Kenyan people as our witness. When he and I met earlier in the year, we agreed to work together to strengthen the unity of our country. We hoped to emphasize that collaboration comprises both competition and disagreement. We did not immediately solve all Kenya's most pressing problems, nor did we see eye to eye on every proposed answer. It is important to emphasize that unity does not necessarily mean unanimity. The Right Honorable Raila Odinga and I stood together not because we agreed on every item of politics or policy, but because we agreed that Kenya is greater and belongs to all of us. None of us is less, or for that matter, more Kenyan than his brother or sister. All of us are entitled to be heard. All of us are entitled to our fair share of Kenya's resources, and all of us are entitled to a government that honors its commitment. Kenyans have reacted with a surge of optimism to our meeting because they wanted a return to unity. And our handshake invited Kenyans to rediscover what they have known all along. When all the politics is said and done, we are each other's keeper and we are stronger together. But if Kenya is to remain strong, we must also change our approach to political competition. We are proud, and I believe rightly so, of our cultural heritage, but it does not follow that our ethnic identity should also be our political identity. We have done just that for half a century, and it has brought us close to very near complete ruin. Too many of us have manipulated our ethnicities to seize power and then exploited it to avoid accountability. We cannot afford, fellow Kenyans, another 50 years of our farmers struggling to make a living, of families without proper sanitation, or of families bankrupted by healthcare costs. We need to change now, in this generation, so that our children can grow to adulthood in a totally different Kenya. We must, together as leaders, demonstrate that we are truly Kenyan citizens. We must do this for our country, not for ourselves. That, honorable members, has been and remains my vision throughout my remaining time as president. That vision, I believe, is within reach of all is within reach of all of us. All we have to do is to look up and grasp it. To see it, I believe all the leaders seated here can help by showing our fellow Kenyans a better way. Let us as leaders learn that we can criticize one another constructively. Let us as leaders teach our fellow Kenyans to adore hard work and reject the easy shilling. Let us teach our fellow Kenyans to preserve the unity of this house called Kenya that we have inherited from our fathers. And I believe if we do this, honorable members, then you today will have, you the leaders of today, will have the eternal gratitude of the Kenyan people and of those born years from now into a Kenya whose politics revolve around service delivery. Na kwa hayo machache na mengi, nasema, honorable speakers of security, I thank you and may God bless you all. Asanteni sana. Thank you. Asante. Ingine iko wapi? Where's the other copy? Najua hii ndio mambo inakuja kuleta shida, inasemekana sasa hatutaki Senate. Yeah. Where's the other copy?
Let us all be observing. Your Excellency the President, the Right Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly, honorable members, we have come to the conclusion of business today and it's now time to adjourn. The Senate stands adjourned until Tuesday, 8th May 2018 at 2:30 p.m.
Our members, rules of business.